receive confirmation from each of our jurors that you have no conflicts with these students?
No conflicts, Your Honor.
No conflicts, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Henderson?
No conflicts, Your Honor.
Great, thank you.
David, where's the YouTube window to close?
Should have opened separately.
Yeah, it should have.
YouTube.
All right, we should be good to go. Thank you.
All right. All right, without any conflicts, then I think we can proceed. Do we need to wait for an all clear from the other courtrooms?
Give us just a second.
All right.
You're good to go. Go ahead.
Okay,
Thank you.
All right, we will begin our trial then. I'm going to initially swear everyone in. By doing that, obviously these oaths are important to maintain the ethical nature of our competition. I cannot see you all or hear you all, but I will trust that you are responding in the affirmative. I would ask that you stand and raise your right hand while you make your oath. Team members, please raise your right hands. Team members, do you promise that the presentation you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition? Great, thank you. All right. I've seen the members of Fortnite there, and then Sonic, I'm assuming that those are affirmations as well. Witnesses, do you promise that the testimony you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to your witness statements, that you will not add material facts or opinions which are not contained in the case problem, and that you will follow the rules and procedures of the mock trial competition?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Gallery members, you should not be logged on through the Zoom forum. However, if you are watching in the classroom or something of that nature or on the YouTube live feed, please make the following oath that, including teachers and attorney coaches, family members, and friends, raise your right hands. Do you promise to represent yourselves as positive role models and to behave in a manner that exemplifies ethical and professional sportsmanship during and after this mock trial round? Thank you. Scoring panelists, please raise your right hands. Do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition?
I do, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right, having sworn all of our participants, I'd like to ask the parties from either the prosecution or defense if there are any preliminary or housekeeping matters that we should handle before getting to the evidence of our trial.
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution would like to ask for requests. The prosecution is going to have our co-counsel, Andy Craig, screen share her screen to show opposing counsel, jury, and yourself the exhibits as long as you give her permission to do so.
During presentation of other attorneys, she'll be the one presenting the evidence. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, I think that's fine. Any objection from Team Sonic?
No, Your Honor, no objection.
All right, I will allow that. Thank you.
We also ask that if all of our witnesses have access to look at their exhibits through either a hard copy or electronically, please.
Ms. Thompson, I assume no objection there.
No objection. We just ask that they only look at the exhibits rather than the affidavits.
Yes, of course.
All right. That will govern the trial. Go ahead.
We also ask if the timekeeper on opposing counsel will stop time during video or audio recording presentations in sake of delay or any interruptions that may happen during the Zoom call.
Ms. Thompson?
Yes, we can make sure that happens.
All right, and that will go both ways, I assume.
Of course, thank you. And then we finally ask that the timekeepers are aware that the times are 25 minutes in total for a direct examination. And during direct, if there's any objections, we ask that the timekeepers to hold time until the objection is either overruled or sustained, and that cross-examination is 20 minutes in total.
All right, I think those are the rules of the competition, so that will be the expectation of the court.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Ms. Thompson, did you have anything?
Yes, we would just like to let you know that we're all competing from the same school, and during the changes of lawyers and witnesses, we have to clean off the area, so there will be a slight delay.
Understood. Anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, excellent. We will begin with opening statements then. And I apologize, I think I missed a bit of the information. So if I don't know your name, please don't be insulted. I just missed it as people were checking in. I do have that Ms. Gonzalez will be handling the plaintiff's opening or prosecution's opening, and the defense opening. Who will that be from Team Sonic? They're probably switching seats on us, so just hang tight, Team Fortnite.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. Can you please repeat what you just said?
I just wanted to make sure, request that the appearance of the attorney handling the defense's opening.
Yes, Your Honor.
Is that you, Miss Yet?
I'm sorry?
Are you handling the opening statement?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. So you can remain unmuted with your video feed, and then Ms. Gonzalez from the prosecution, you may begin when you are ready.
May it please the court, counsel, and members of the jury. My name is Abriana Gonzalez, and I am here on behalf of the people of the state of Colorado, here today bringing charges against Avery Becker. This is the people of the state of Colorado versus Avery Becker. On March 6, 2020, there was a burglary gone bad. The head coach of the Colorado High School mock trial team was found murdered in the doorway of his home. Mr. Brackman dedicated his time to helping high schoolers who were interested in mock trials, and in return, he was stabbed in the back, not only figuratively, but literally. After one of his students, Avery Becker, was late for appeared to be the umpteenth time, is apparently the start of this awful murder. When Mr. Brackman confronted Avery about this, he was infuriated and did harm to Mr. Brackman's car, which was a beautiful 1986 Porsche 911. The defendant vandalized Mr. Brackman's car, and he wrote "Worst Attorney Award" in Sharpie. You will hear that after vandalizing Mr. Brackman's car, Avery Becker said, "I would get back at him if it's the last thing I did." After the unfortunate incident with Mr. Brackman's car, demotion was brought into the mix. You will hear that the defendant was kicked off the A team to the B team. This led to Mr. Becker wanting payback for what he thought was unfair, so he had decided he would vandalize Mr. Brackman's house, but that burglary went bad. While the defendant thought he would be alone in the house, Mr. Brackman was actually home. A struggle ensued when Mr. Brackman confronted the defendant. And that struggle ended with a knife in the back for Mr. Brackman. For this is the burglary gone bad. My team will bring evidence and multiple witnesses showing Avery Becker is guilty. We will do so by showing photos from evidence, such as Mr. Brackman laying face down in his blood, a bloody kitchen knife, and text from the defendant to Ms. Cifuentes. In addition, our witnesses you will be hearing from today are Detective Jordan Markowitz, Kyle Kuwas, and Alex Cifuentes. Detective Markowitz is an expert witness and has been a detective for 7 years. He also has specialized training and experience with cell phones. With this specialized training, Detective Markowitz has learned how to use forensic software such as the Celebrite system, how to acquire and interpret cellular records, and how to obtain and interpret cell tower data. He will bring evidence from his training and his findings from his investigation on Mr. Brackman's case. He is the one who found cell tower pings that pinpoint Avery Becker's phone in the vicinity of Mr. Brackman's house. There are text records that Avery was going to break into Mr. Brackman's house, which proves Avery was there. Alex Cifuentes, a student at Colorado High School. He has been friends with the defendant for a while now. He took mock trials very seriously and prepared for the tournament as much as she could, along with memorizing applicable rules in openings and closings as well. Ms. Cifuentes gives a lot of background and information on the defendant since they have known each other for a while. Ms. Cifuentes' experience with the defendant and Mr. Brackman adds to evidence on the motive of the defendant. Ms. Kubaugh is an expert witness who is a crime scene reconstruction investigator, has 19 years of experience in investigating complex crime scenes. From Ms. Kubaugh, you will hear about evidence from the crime scene, and she will talk about how it was left. Ms. Kubaugh approached this case with careful analyzation and worked with thorough steps. Now I will anticipate that you will hear from Avery Becker, Taylor Perkins, and Blake Van Owen to testify from the proponent side. Though the defendant, Mr. Becker, is unprepared, Ms. Perkins is friends with the defendant, and Mr. Owen is a haughty witness. We have the burden to show that Avery killed Mackenzie Brackman. The burden means that we, the prosecution, must prove to show the jury beyond reasonable doubt the existence of all elements necessary to constitute the crime charged. Throughout these testimonies from these witnesses, my team will go to prove that the defendant is guilty for felony murder on Mackenzie Brackman. The defendant committed felony murder and second-degree burglary. At the end of this trial, my co-counsel Andy Craig will come before you and review the testimony and evidence we have received in this case. Following that review, we will be asking that you find the defendant guilty for felony murder and second-degree burglary.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Yett, you may present your opening statement on behalf of the defendant.
Thank you, Your Honor. The less I see, the more I know. Ladies and gentlemen, you're here today because of the loss of Mr. Mackenzie Brackman, a local defense attorney and the coach for the Colorado High School mock trial team. In March of last year, Mr. Brackman's mock trial team had just won their regional competition and was preparing to go to state. But Mr. Brackman was sadly murdered inside of his own home. Now, you're here today because the prosecution believes that Avery Becker, a good student, a committed mock trial participant, a daughter, a friend, a good person, the prosecution believes that she did this. Now, Avery Becker will testify for you today, which she has no duty to do. Avery has nothing to prove to you, but she will testify, and she will tell you that although her and Mr. Brackman had their disagreements around mock trial, she could never hurt him. Today, you'll also hear from Taylor Perkins, Avery Becker's best friend, and Taylor will verify that she was with Avery Becker the entire day of March 6th, and there is no possible way Avery could have done this. The less I see, the more I know that Avery has a simple alibi. Now, you'll also hear from Professor Blake Van Owen, a private investigator. And Professor Van Owen will tell you about all of his experience and his work. And the less I see, the more I know Professor Van Owen will show you the holes in the prosecution's case and show us that there is reasonable doubt within this case. The less I see, the more I know the prosecution doesn't have a full case for us today. You'll also hear from Kyle Kuzak, a crime scene reconstruction investigator with the same training as our own Professor Blake Van Owen. And Kyle Kuzak will tell you that there is no hard evidence linking Avery Becker to this crime scene. The less I see, the more I know that Avery Becker just simply wasn't there. Detective Jordan Markowitz, the head detective on this case, will tell you about them and their police work on this case. And Detective Jordan Markowitz will talk to you about how they only came up with one suspect. The less suspects I see, the more I know. They'll also talk to you about videos of the intruder entering the home of Mackenzie Brackman, but the less I see of Avery Becker on those videos, the more I know she wasn't there. They'll also talk to you about lost evidence, ladies and gentlemen, and the less evidence I see, the more I know about the police work on this case. The less I see from the police in general, the more I know they didn't utilize all of their materials and resources to complete a thorough investigation of this case. You'll also hear from Alex Cifuentes, a high school student much like Avery Becker. Alex claims to be best friends with Avery Becker, yet is here testifying against her. And now, ladies and gentlemen, as we go into this case and as you hear Alex's testimony, I ask you to look for any bias that you might see there. Alex will testify about how they saw all of Mr. Brackman and Avery Becker's petty arguments surrounding mock trial. And now, ladies and gentlemen, the prosecution has the burden of proof. They must prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that it is Avery Becker who committed this crime. And today you will see the prosecution not meet their burden of proof. You will see the holes in their case, and you will see Avery is not guilty. And as we go into this case, ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to ask yourselves, should I be seeing more from the prosecution? Is this all I should be seeing? Do I know that this is all there is
to this case, and do I know that this is Avery Becker who committed this crime? Now, the defense has no burden of proof, but we will show you that the prosecution wants you to see less and feel like you then know more. And the defense will present you with our case, and you will see the unbiased facts of this case, and you will see our full investigation and case. And you will know that Avery Becker is not guilty. Today, Avery Becker, a good, smart, innocent high school student, will be will be convicted of felony murder if you walk blindly into this case. Now, we know that Avery Becker didn't do this, and we ask you to see that Avery Becker is not guilty. The defense will show you suspects with more real-life motive than Avery Becker that the prosecution never investigated, and the defense will show you the unrealisticness of our client committing this crime. The defense will show you and give you more information, not less. And the less I see of Avery Becker in the prosecution's case, the more I know she's not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yet. All right. The people may begin with their case. It looks like we have, was it Ms. Mungia?
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution calls Jordan Markowitz to the stand.
All right. And am I saying your last name correctly, ma'am?
It's Mungia, but you're pretty
Mungia.
close. Yeah, you
Okay.
can just say Sanchez if Mungia is too much.
No problem. And then we've got Mr. Markowitz here. And then was it Mr. or Mrs. Miller from, I just wrote down Miller. So whoever that is from Team Sonic. I know they have to switch tables like they said at the beginning, so just give them one moment.
Your Honor, could you repeat your previous statement? I just hopped on.
No problem. I was just trying to clarify who it was from your team. It looks like it's you, Ms. Miller, correct?
It is. Yes, it is in fact me.
Okay. All right. Ms. Mungia, are you ready to begin?
Yes, Your Honor.
The witness is yours.
Alrighty. Please state your first and last name and spell your last name for the record.
Jordan Markowitz, Markowitz.
And what brings you here today?
I am testifying on behalf of the people of Colorado for the murder of Mackenzie Brackman.
And what is your current occupation?
I'm currently a detective with the Denver Police Department.
And how long have you been with the Denver Police Department?
I started my career with the Denver Police Department around 13 years ago.
And how long have you been a detective for?
I've been a detective for approximately 7 years.
Have you ever investigated a homicide before?
I have.
Do you have any specialized training in pertaining cell phones?
I do.
Can you tell me more what you do with cell phones?
I can gain access to any cell phone to look through records, and I also work with cell towers.
And has that training resulted in you receiving any certifications or degree at all?
Yes, it has. I received a certification from the American Academy of Law Enforcement for cell phone technology, as well as forensic data recovery.
And what did you have to do in order to receive that certification?
I had to complete a 3-day training course and pass a certification test.
What were you trained to do in that 3-day course of cell phones?
I learned about these types of cell phone data and records that can be obtained. I also learned how to use forensic software such as the Celebrite system, how to download information from a cell phone, how to acquire and interpret cellular records, and how to obtain and interpret cell tower data.
Have you ever personally downloaded contents of a cell phone?
I have, yes.
Can you give an estimate as to how many consultations or analysis you have provided with gaining contents of a cell phone?
Literally hundreds of cell phones.
Have you ever had to use cell tower data?
I have.
How often do you use cell tower data?
I use cell tower data on a regular basis.
At this time, Your Honor, I'm tendering Jordan Markowitz as an expert witness in the field of call detail reports to include cell towers and location information, and as a crime scene investigator.
All right. Thank you. Ms. Miller, any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
All right. The witness will be admitted as an expert in those areas. You may proceed.
Alrighty. What was reported on Friday, March 6, 2020, Detective?
A motorist reported seeing a person passed out at the residence of 444 South Flower Street.
Was there anyone called out to the scene?
Yes, paramedics were the first ones to respond, and they called for officers upon finding the victim, who was Mackenzie Brackman, deceased just inside the front door of his residence. After that, uniformed officers were able to secure the scene.
And what brought you, a homicide detective, to this scene?
This death was definitely not an accident or a death of natural causes. It was murder.
At what time did you respond to the scene?
I responded at approximately 14:20 hours.
When you first arrived to the scene, what did you observe?
I observed Mackenzie Brackman laying face down on his porch. I also observed a knife covered in blood laying on the ground next to the victim's body.
Can you please tell the jurors what the knife looked like?
The knife was made of stainless steel. It was approximately 26 centimeters long.
Detective, have you reviewed Exhibits 5 and 6 in preparation for this trial today?
I have, yes.
And what is Exhibit 5 showing?
Exhibit 5 is a photograph of the knife that was found next to Mackenzie Brackman's body.
And what is Exhibit 6 showing?
Exhibit 6 is showing another photograph of the knife lined up next to a ruler so we can get an idea of how long it was.
Did you personally take these pictures?
No, I did not.
Do these pictures fairly and accurately depict the knife collected in this case?
They do, yes.
At this time, I'd like to move Exhibit 5 and 6 into evidence.
All right, Ms. Miller, any objection?
No objection to the admittance of either exhibit into evidence.
Thank you. The Exhibit 5 and 6 will be admitted into the prosecution's evidence.
In Exhibit 5, is this exactly how you found the knife when you approached the scene?
Yes, it is.
Can you describe what the body looked like?
Mackenzie Brackman was laying face down on his porch with a stab wound to his left scapula.
Detective, have you reviewed Exhibits 1 and 3 in preparation for trial?
Yes, I have.
Can you please explain to the jury what these exhibits are?
Exhibits 1 and 3 are both photographs of Mackenzie Brackman laying face down dead just inside his home.
Do these photographs accurately depict how you found Mackenzie Brackman when you arrived to the scene?
They do, yes.
At this time, I'd like to move Exhibit 1 and 3 into evidence.
And there's no objection from the defense, Your Honor.
Thank you. The exhibits will be so admitted.
Alrighty. Did you observe anything else while you were by the body?
Yes, I actually found the Ring doorbell that was positioned at the front door.
Alrighty. Taking a look back at Exhibit 1, Detective, is this the Ring doorbell you are referring to?
Yes, you can actually see the Ring doorbell at the top right-hand corner of Exhibit 1.
Do you have previous experience with Ring doorbells?
I do, yes.
Can you please explain what a Ring doorbell does?
A Ring doorbell functions as a normal doorbell does, although it has a camera attached to it that can record a specific field of view.
Is a Ring doorbell motion activated?
Yes, it is.
Objection, Your Honor. Lack of personal knowledge. While Jordan Markowitz has been admitted as an expert in multiple fields, he has not yet been admitted as an expert in any sort of videography, Ring videos, or any sort of investigation of these sorts of videos.
All right, thank you, Ms. Miller. I'm going to overrule the objection just because I don't think we're in the field of expert testimony here. If we get any more specific, Ms. Munguia, you may be approaching that line. So just be warned of that. You may continue with your answer, Detective Markowitz.
Would you please repeat the question?
Of course. Is a Ring doorbell motion activated?
Yes, Ring doorbells are motion activated. They can detect motion from up to 5 feet away.
And how did you know if the Ring doorbell was working?
So I found out they were working when I downloaded information off of Brackman's phone to obtain his account data and passwords for his Ring account.
And was this the only Ring doorbell in the residence?
It was not. After I gained access to his Ring account, there were links to the second doorbell that was positioned by the back door of the residence.
Were you the first one to gain access to these videos?
I was.
Detective, have you reviewed Exhibits 12 and 13 in preparation for trial?
I have, yes.
Can you please explain to the jury what Exhibit 12 and 13 is?
Exhibit 12 and 13 are both videos of a masked suspect perusing about the house of the victim.
And do these video copies fairly and accurately depict the Ring doorbell footage from Brackman's phone?
They do, yes.
At this time, I'd like to move Exhibit 12 and 13 into evidence.
Ms. Miller, any objection?
There's no objection from the defense, Your Honor.
The exhibits are admitted.
Alrighty. As you can see, those are the Ring doorbell videos that captured Avery Becker going in and out of the house. After finding the body and the Ring doorbell, what did you do next, Detective?
After I observed the body, I walked into the dining room.
And what did you notice when you went into the dining area?
The dining area had a few chairs. I also saw that one of the chairs was knocked over, and I observed a broken plate on the floor.
Was there any blood in the house?
Yes, I also saw red liquid splattered on the floor. It was blood.
Are you able to give an expert opinion on whether it was blood or not?
Even though I'm not an expert in blood splatter, I have been to many scenes with more than enough homicides to recognize the cast-off marks.
After finding the blood splatter, what did you do next?
While the forensic team was doing their work, I looked throughout the rest of the victim's home.
So based on your observations from this scene and past scenes that you have worked on, what can you hypothesize that has happened here?
It is pretty obvious to me that the victim, Mr. Mackenzie Brackman, had caught someone breaking into his home and had confronted the intruder with a large knife from the kitchen, but the intruder was able to gain control of the knife and stab Brackman.
After you went through the whole house, detective, did you ever pull data from Brackman's phone?
I did. I downloaded the contents of his phone.
And did you find anything on Brackman's cell phone?
I found a lot of text messages and emails that were related to an activity called mock trial.
How did that data drive your investigation, detective?
It turns out, due to his phone, he was the coach of mock trial. It appeared to me that he spent more time coaching the high school mock trial team than at his actual job as a lawyer, and this led me to Alex Cifuentes.
Why did it lead you to Alex Cifuentes?
Alex Cifuentes told me that another student that was also on the mock trial team had texted something about the plan to trash Mackenzie Brackman's home.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
Explain your objection further for me, Ms. Miller.
Yeah, I'm objecting on the grounds of hearsay, as Detective Markowitz has just said that this student, Alex Cifuentes, said something about another student having plans to trash Mr. Brackman's house. And as this is a statement being brought in for the truth of the matter asserted, it is in fact hearsay.
Ms. Munguia?
Your Honor, this is not hearsay as this is admissible by party opponent rule.
Was the statement made by Alex Cifuentes or the statement made by Ms. Becker?
The statement was made by Alex Cifuentes, but there is text conversations between the defendant, Avery Becker, and our witness, Alex Cifuentes, that will go into show the context of the conversation about Brackman.
All right.
Your Honor, may I respond?
I think it's okay, Ms. Miller. I'm going to sustain the objection at this point in time. If you want to ask direct questions about statements of your party opponent, that would be a different issue. But Alex Cifuentes, I believe, will testify here today and can testify to those statements themselves.
Alrighty. Detective, have you reviewed Exhibits 14 in preparation for trial?
I have, yes.
Can you please explain to the jury what Exhibit 14 is?
So Exhibit 14 is a photograph of a text message conversation between Avery Becker and Alex Cifuentes.
And who first gained access to these messages?
Alex Cifuentes, she had the conversation with the defendant Avery Becker and then sent me screenshots of the messages.
Do these copies...
Objection, Your Honor. I object on the grounds of hearsay once again.
Go ahead, Ms. Miller, the basis of your objection.
Well, the text messages are, the text messages sent by Alex Cifuentes in this conversation are statements brought in for the truth of the matter, as it's a conversation between Miss Avery Becker and Alex Cifuentes, and so these statements once again are hearsay.
Ms. Munguia, your response?
Your Honor, though our witness, Alex Cifuentes, will be testifying today on these messages, and as the defendant is here, Avery Becker, they both can consent that these are the texts and messages between them, and later on you will see the context of their conversation that goes to show Avery Becker's motive.
All right. Are you intending to admit these exhibits with your current witness?
I am.
Lay some foundation there for me. If you have the other witnesses present to deal with the hearsay issue, why is it appropriate for Detective Markowitz to admit these currently?
Detective Markowitz was the first, besides Alex Cifuentes, was the first person to gain access to these messages after Alex Cifuentes had the conversation with Avery Becker. So therefore, this leads Detective Markowitz's investigation to show Avery Becker's motive for the murder.
All right. I appreciate that, Ms. Munguia. I think at this point in time, it would be appropriate for Detective Markowitz to talk about the text messages. To admit them, I think we'll need to deal with that with your later witness.
All right. So I will move on from there. So after you received this conversation from Alex Cifuentes, what did you do next, Detective?
So right after that, I decided that I wanted to immediately contact Avery Becker to arrange for her to come in for an interrogation.
And what did you decide to do next with your investigation?
I obtained a warrant to search Avery Becker's cell phone and then called Becker's attorney to make arrangements for this search.
And what did you find on Avery Becker's phone?
I was told that Avery Becker actually lost her phone on March 5th, 2020, and that she no longer had possession of it.
Did you ever gain access into Avery Becker's phone?
I eventually did, yes. Becker's attorney provided me with a phone number for Avery Becker's phone, so I was able to obtain a court order and account records from Becker's service provider and the cell tower records for March 6th, 2020.
How do you know which tower the phone connects to?
Normally, a cell phone connects to the nearest tower from where it is located.
And was there anything in the cell tower records?
Well, technically, I actually received what are called call detail records, also known as CDRs.
What do those records
Objection,
show?
Your Honor. Lack of personal knowledge. Your Honor, may I explain my objection just a bit?
You may.
I'm objecting on the grounds of lack of personal knowledge, as Detective Markowitz was entered in as an expert in call detail reports, not call detail records. And so Detective Markowitz does not have the expertise to testify on behalf of the call detail records in this case.
All right. Ms. Mungia, your response.
Your Honor, my witness has already been entered as an expert witness, as he shows that he has provided past knowledge in gaining access into records and past reports and contents of a cell phone, where he can prove his knowledge and that he is an expert with multiple years of experience in this field.
All right. Why don't you lay some foundation about the difference between these two types of reports or documents, and then we can discuss the issue of the expert testimony, Ms. Miller.
Detective Markowitz, what is CDR, or what is a call detail record?
So a call detail record just shows which antenna that a cell phone communicated with and which cell phone tower.
And how long have you been working with call detail records for?
My entire career as a detective, so 7 years.
And are you able to testify on what those records showed?
I am, yes.
So what did they show?
So these actually showed that the cell phone would you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, what do the records show?
These records actually show that there was another cell phone that was sending several texts and placing several calls to Avery Becker's phone, leading up to the time that Mackenzie Brackman was killed.
Your Honor, I have already raised my objection at this point. I'm not objecting to the difference between call detail records and reports, but rather the fact that opposing counsel entered Detective Markowitz in as an expert in call detail reports, and they are currently testifying on call detail records.
I think I understand, Ms. Miller, your objection. Ms. Mungia, would you like to admit your witness as an expert in that area?
I would like to, yes.
All right. And that's based on the prior testimony and the current testimony he just gave about his education and experience, correct?
Yes.
Ms. Miller, are you objecting to that basis?
I am not, as they have laid enough foundation.
All right, thank you. The witness will be admitted as an expert witness in this additional area. You may continue your line of questioning.
Thank you. Would you like me to repeat that last question, Detective?
Yes, please.
What did those records show?
The records actually show that there was another cell phone that was sending several texts and placing several calls to Avery Becker's phone, leading up to the time that Mackenzie Brackman was killed.
And who did the other cell phone belong to?
I was able to confirm that the other cell phone belonged to another high school student by the name of Taylor Perkins.
And how are you able to confirm this?
I was able to confirm this through the CDRs.
And can you tell the jury more about this between Avery Becker and Perkins?
Both the calls and text messages were sent from Perkins, but Becker did not answer them at all.
And what else did Becker's records show?
The records then show that all activity by Becker's phone stopped, just completely stopped, after 13:20 hours on March 6th, 2020.
Why weren't you able to see any more data on Becker's phone?
If a phone is turned off completely, it stops communicating entirely with the cell towers around it, and that means that there is no further activity on CDRs.
Based on your own expert opinion, what do you think happened to Avery Becker's phone?
I suspect that the phone was turned off after the murder.
Detective, have you reviewed Exhibits 15 in preparation for trial?
I have, yes.
Can you please explain what Exhibit 15 is showing?
This is a diagram that I have put together that summarizes what the call detailed records of Becker's phone show.
And does this diagram fairly and accurately show how you first made the diagram?
Yes, it does.
At this time, I'd like to move Exhibit 15 into evidence.
Ms. Miller? Any objection?
No objection here, Your Honor.
The exhibit is admitted.
Alrighty, now let's get into what you made, Detective. Can you tell the jury about this diagram?
It shows the location of the cell towers that Becker's phone communicated with on March 6th and the time leading up to the homicide. It also shows the direction and location of the particular antenna that is being communicated with.
Alrighty, let's start from the very beginning. What are the numbers that are next to the antennas?
Those numbers that you're speaking of indicate the times and the specific antenna that is being connected to. You can see that Becker received a text from Perkins at 12:47 p.m. And the communication went through cell tower antenna 12273.
And where's that antenna located at?
That antenna covers Becker's house.
What happens next, Detective?
We can see that the next communication from Perkins, which was another text at 12:55, and that one went through cell tower antenna 11911.
And then what does the antenna report show?
We get the next communication, which is an incoming phone call from Perkins again at 13:05.
What antenna did those phone calls and text messages connect to?
Through cell tower antenna 11971, which is the closest tower to Brackman's residence.
And then what does the CDR data show during this?
It indicates that Becker was at home somewhere between 12:45 and 12:50, and then left and drove towards Brackman's house, traveling most likely along Rock Creek Parkway at 12:55 p.m. Then from 1:05 p.m., Becker was at Brackman's house.
Objection, Your Honor. Facts not in evidence.
Ms. Munguia?
Your Honor, my witness has been entered in as an expert witness, and he is able to give an expert opinion based on the diagram that he personally made to go show basically what the defendant has done.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes, please.
While this is true, Detective Markowitz has just testified that this diagram itself shows Miss Becker herself's location, and the fact that, or the speculation that she was driving on a certain road. As we can see in this diagram, there's no indication of Miss Becker's location or any routes that she took while driving, and so therefore I object on the grounds of facts not in evidence.
All right, the objection will be sustained. Ms. Munguia, direct your witness to be clear about his conclusions and testimony to testify to things that his expertise can assist the jury with, all right?
Of course. Alrighty, Detective. Now, based on your own expert opinion, what happened overall in this investigation?
Based on all the evidence that we have collected, it is very clear to me that Avery Becker went to Brackman's house on Friday, March 6, 2020, with the intent to break in and vandalize the house. And then he realized that Brackman was home, so the defendant got a hold of a knife and ended up fatally stabbing Mackenzie Brackman.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Miller?
Okay, yes, good afternoon, Detective.
Good afternoon.
So you were called to the scene of 444 South Flower Street on March 6, 2020, yes?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, and you have testified that you were called because a passing motorist reported seeing a body pass out on the porch of this residence on that day, yes?
That is correct, yes.
And you arrived at this scene along with other uniformed officers, yes?
They did arrive before me, yes, but I followed them shortly after.
Okay. And when you arrived at the house, you found Mr. Brackman's body, yes?
I did see it, yes. I was not the
Okay.
first to find it, though.
But when you arrived, the body was not on the porch, yes?
Technically, no.
Okay, technically the body was inside the house, yes?
Laying just inside. You are correct, yes.
Okay, but just to clarify, the body was laying inside the house, not on the porch, yes?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. I'll now direct your attention to exhibits 1 and 4 as I ask my co-counsel to screen share. And just as those are getting pulled up, You and your team took photographs of things that you deemed important at the scene, yes?
I did not take any of the photographs myself, but there were photographs taken. You are correct about that.
Okay. Okay, and we'll wait just a moment until 1 and 4 are being screen shared. Okay. Okay, so to begin with exhibit number 1, Detective, do you recognize this photograph?
I do, yes.
What does it appear to be of?
This appears to be a photograph of Mackenzie Brackman laying dead face down just inside his home.
And does it appear to be true and accurate?
It does, yes.
Okay, and now I'll ask my co-counsel to scroll down to exhibit number 4, please. Okay, and here, do you recognize this photograph?
I do, yes.
Okay, and what does this photograph appear to be of?
This is another photograph of Mackenzie Brackman laying face down dead inside his home.
Okay, and does it appear to be a true and accurate copy of the photograph taken at the scene?
It does, yes.
Okay, Your Honor, I now ask to admit exhibits 1 and 4 into evidence.
Were these previously admitted?
I believe that exhibit 1 may have been, but 4 was not. My mistake on exhibit number 1, but I asked for 4 to be admitted.
All right, I apologize to you for not keeping track of those numbers. Exhibit 4 will be admitted as defense exhibit number 4.
Okay, so here we can see in exhibit number 1, I'll ask my co-counsel to scroll down just a bit. We can see that Mr. Brackman is laying face down, yes?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, and as my co-counsel scrolls down a bit more here, we can see that Mr. Brackman's arm is resting above his head in somewhat of like this form.
Yes, you are correct.
Okay, I'll now ask my co-counsel to scroll down to exhibit number 4. And here again, we can see Mr. Brackman laying face down inside his house, yes?
Yes, that is correct.
And we can see his right arm in this photograph as well, yes?
We can, yes.
Okay, but here we see that his right arm is positioned rather directly to the right of his body, not directly above, yes? His hand is more like this?
I'm going to say it's more diagonally. I don't think it's directly to the right or above.
Objection,
Okay.
relevance?
Your objection was as to relevance?
Yes.
All right, do you have anything further to add?
Why is the opposing counsel questioning the authenticity of the pictures as the victim is dead?
All right, I'm going to overrule the objection at this time. Ms. Miller, you may continue in your line of questioning. If you believe we've strayed too far again, Ms. Munguia, you can certainly object.
Thank you.
Okay, so just to get back to this photograph, we can see here that Mr. Brackman's hand is not laying above his head, yes?
Not directly above, no.
Okay, but not in the same position that it was in Exhibit 1.
I believe they do look to be the same position.
But the hand in this photograph is laying to the side of Mr. Brackman.
They are taken from a different angle.
But I'll repeat my question again. His hand is laying to the side of his body in this photograph, yes?
Answered.
I'm sorry, one moment. Ms. Munguia, what was that?
I objected to asked and answered.
Your Honor, may I respond?
You may.
Okay. I rephrased my question, and also this question has not yet been answered. While I did ask a question along the similar lines as the one that I asked originally, the detective has not had a chance to answer, and so.
All right, Ms. Miller, I'll allow it. You may proceed.
Okay, so just to restate my question once again, we can see that his hand in this photograph is laying to the side of his body, yes?
Not directly to the side, no.
Okay, but we don't see it laying above his head.
Not directly above, no.
Okay, but we saw it laying directly above his head in Exhibit 1, yes?
Not directly above, no.
Okay, but it was above his head in some sort, yes?
In some slight sort of way, yes, you are correct.
Okay, but yes, in some slight sort of way.
Yes,
Okay. Okay. So you took more photographs while at the scene, yes?
I did not take any photographs. I was not responsible for taking photographs.
I apologize. Your team took more photographs while at the scene, yes?
Yes, you are correct.
And I
Okay.
apologize, parties. Just one moment. If I can have the timekeepers pause for just a minute. I'm having a computer issue. Give me 2 seconds to fix it. All right, that should have fixed it. Thank you. We can restart the time. Go ahead, Ms. Miller.
And so photographs of blood splatter were taken at the scene, yes?
That is correct, yes.
As well as blood drops near Mr. Brackman's body?
In his home, yes.
Yes, okay. And these photographs are not available for us to see here today.
You are correct.
Okay, these photographs were lost by the police, yes?
That is false. They were not lost. The files became corrupted. There's a difference between corruption and losing something.
Okay, but just to clarify, these files became corrupt in the hands of the police.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, and so there are photographs that the jury will not have the opportunity to see here today?
You are correct, yes.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
All right, Ms. Mungia, you can redirect.
Alrighty, thank you. Detective Markowitz, did a motorist report this scene?
Yes, a motorist did report this scene.
To your knowledge, was this motorist at the scene?
They weren't at the scene. They were only driving by the scene.
So what did you notice when you approached the scene?
I noticed that Mackenzie Brackman was laying face down dead right inside his home.
And is this exactly how you found Mackenzie Brackman?
Yes, it is.
No further questions.
All right, thank you. Detective Markowitz, you are excused. Thank you for your testimony here today. We can move on to the second prosecution witness. I believe that will be presented by Attorney Gonzalez with Attorney Thompson on behalf of the defense.
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution calls Alex Fuentes to the stand.
All right, let's give the defense here just one moment to reposition. As they indicated, they've got to sanitize their area between speakers. One moment. All right, Ms. Thompson, are you ready?
Yes, we're ready. Thank you.
Timekeepers, are you ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. You may proceed.
Please state your name and spell your last for the record, please.
Alex Cifuentes, Sifuentes.
And why are you here today, Alex?
I am here to testify by ask of the state of Colorado to testify the motive of Avery Becker.
Where do you go to school?
I'm a senior at Colorado High School, also known as CHS.
Did you participate in any extracurriculars there?
Yes, I participated in mock trial.
Was Avery Becker also part of this mock trial team?
Yes, Avery Becker was the one who introduced me to mock trial.
How long have you known Avery Becker?
I've known Avery Becker since my freshman year.
Your Honor, can we have Avery Becker turn on their video for identification purposes?
All right. And we can pause time while we do this. Thank you, Ms. Becker.
In the Zoom meeting?
Yes.
Your Honor, I ask that the record reflect that my witness has identified the defendant, Avery Becker, subject to cross-examination.
Thank you. So identified.
Thank you. How would you describe your relationship with the defendant?
Avery Becker and I were good friends.
And how would the defendant act during mock trial practices?
Avery Becker was constantly late to practice and never prepared.
What helpful traits did the defendant have in mock trial?
I will admit Avery was fairly good at making things up on the fly and improvising.
And did you ever see the defendant and Mr. Brackman interact with one another?
Yes, they interacted during practice.
Did Mr. Brackman ever notice that the defendant was late?
Yes.
And how was Mr. Brackman and the defendant's relationship?
Their relationship was not good. Mr. Brockman.
Objection, lack of personal knowledge.
Lay some foundation for me here as to the response to that question, please.
Do you want me to like respond to her?
I'll sustain the objection, but Ms. Gonzalez, I think you can lay some foundation with an additional question or two.
Okay. During practice, would Mr. Brackman and Avery ever interact with one another?
Yes, they interacted. Mr. Brockman would constantly criticize Avery.
And were you there when Avery and Mr. Brackman were there at mock trial?
Yes.
So how was Mr. Brackman and the defendant's relationship when they interacted?
Mr. Brockman was annoyed at Avery for being late and unprepared, and Avery was didn't like Mr. Brockman for constantly criticizing him.
And was there ever a point where you saw the relationship take a turn?
Yes, their relationship hit its boiling point when Avery showed up late to practice for the 10th time.
And were there any consequences for the defendant being late so often?
Yes, Mr. Brockman demoted Avery to B team.
After this, what did the defendant do?
Avery stormed out being very angry with a Sharpie.
What did he do with that Sharpie?
He went out to Mr. Brockman's car and wrote on his
Objection. I again object to lack of personal knowledge. Ms. Cifuentes hasn't established that they were with Avery Becker during this time and that they were with them when they supposedly stormed out. I just object to lack of foundation or lack of.
All right, I will sustain that objection. Ms. Gonzalez, continue your questions, but make sure that we're only asking Ms. Cifuentes to testify about things she personally saw or observed.
What happened after this incident? Or how did you know that it was a Sharpie?
I saw Avery holding the Sharpie as he stormed out.
And what happened after this incident?
Mr. Brockman was infuriated and kicked Avery off the team.
Did you hear from Avery after this?
Yes, Avery texted me shortly after asking if I can help him get back on the team.
And what did the defendant text you?
He was asking if I can talk to Mr. Brockman and see if I can help him get back on the team.
I would now like to direct our attention to Exhibit 14. Looking at the materials in front of you, can you refer to what is marked as Exhibit 14?
Yes.
What is this photo?
It is a conversation between Avery Becker and I over the phone.
And do you recognize this?
Yes.
Is this a fair and accurate representation of this image?
Yes.
Your Honor, I now ask that this be admitted to as evidence.
All right, Ms. Thompson?
I object to hearsay, Your Honor.
Be more specific in your objection for me.
Yes, sorry. I object to the hearsay with Alex Cifuentes' statements within this text message.
All right. Ms. Gonzalez, do you have an exception to the hearsay statements of Alex Cifuentes?
And I'm sorry, I object to Alex Cifuentes' statements and the supposed Avery Becker statements.
All right. So let's deal with those separately. Ms. Gonzalez, regarding Alex Cifuentes' out-of-court statements.
We are focusing on what Avery Becker said in the text messages, as it is an admission of party opponent.
All right, and I do think that gets us past the statements alleged to have been made here by Ms. Becker. As to the statements of Ms. Cifuentes.
Can I have a moment to confer with co-counsel?
You may.
And I'm sorry, can we have a time check?
Timekeepers, if you'll announce your times.
I have 5 minutes and 37 seconds remaining.
Then can I move on to just not admitting it then?
All right. You're withdrawing your request to admit this exhibit?
Yes.
Okay, you may proceed.
What happened? Oh, did you talk to Mr. Brackman about these text messages?
I did. He didn't
And then
seem
what
to
happened
want to budge. Sorry, you were saying.
What happened after you told the defendant this?
Avery Becker was infuriated, and in the text messages, he said, if he's still mad about his Porsche, then
I object to hearsay yet again.
All right, I believe Ms. Cifuentes is testifying to a statement made by Ms. Becker. Is that correct, Ms. Cifuentes?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Thompson, what's the basis of your objection?
The basis of the objection is that there's been no proof that this was Avery Becker actually speaking. We have no proof of I can't say that word. We have no proof that this was actually Avery Becker speaking. We don't have any timestamps. We don't have any of that. So it wouldn't be party opponent since it's not the defendant speaking, or we don't know it is.
All right, Ms. Gonzalez, and clarify for me here, are we talking about a verbal statement or are we referring to a statement made via text message?
Via text message.
Okay, can you respond to Ms. Ms. Thompson's objection about the authenticity of the speaker?
Can I have a moment to confer with co-counsel?
You may. And we're on pause time right now, timekeepers.
It is the dependent's phone number which proves its authenticity.
All right.
Your Honor, may I respond?
You may.
We have no proof that this is the defendant's phone number. We haven't been shown a phone number.
Okay, and Ms. Gonzalez, it does appear that there's a name indicated in the contact. Obviously, that exhibit was not admitted, so now we're just testifying from Ms. Cifuentes' recollection. Perhaps there's a way you can ask this question that doesn't relate it specifically to be Ms. Becker and can simply testify about a conversation that was had.
Okay. Did you hear from Mr. Becker again?
No.
Okay, thank you. No more questions, Your Honor.
Okay, all right. Ms. Thompson, then I believe it's your cross.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Ms. Cifuentes, you claim that you're best friends with the defendant, Avery Becker,
Yes, I do.
but you guys never hung out outside of practice. Is that true?
Yes.
But you still consider yourselves best friends.
Yes.
And you're here testifying today against Avery Becker?
I would not tell a lie for the state of Colorado.
But again, you're here testifying against Avery Becker, your best friend.
Yes, I am.
Let's talk a little bit about the team. You always saw Avery get awards.
Yes.
And you were jealous that Avery always got awards.
Yes, I was.
Because Avery never put in the work that you did.
Yes, Avery never put in as much effort as I did.
And that made you frustrated.
It did make me frustrated, just as much as it would make anyone else.
Let's talk a little bit about the texts that were brought up. Did you submit any text messages? You submit text messages to the investigators, didn't you?
Yes, I did send screenshots to Detective Markowitz.
But they never saw the actual phone, did they?
No, my phone was old and I didn't bring it.
So they never were able to verify that these text messages were authentic.
I did offer to bring them in.
But you never did bring them in, did you?
No, Detective Markowitz said the screenshots were fine.
You're aware that there's ways to manipulate text messages or create falsified text messages,
Yes, I am aware.
yet you still sent screenshots rather than giving them the phone?
As I said, I offered to bring the phone in.
But you never did.
No, because Detective Markowitz said not to.
And you had an interview with Detective Markowitz?
I did.
And you didn't bring your phone into the interview?
No, I was rushed out the door and forgot my phone on the charger.
So that was a no?
Yes, that was enough.
Thank you. No further questions.
Right. Ms. Gonzalez, any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Were you accused of photoshopping photos that you sent to the police station?
Yes, I was accused, but I never did it.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. No more questions.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Cifuentes. I think that concludes your testimony at this time. I believe the prosecution has a third and final witness.
Yes, Your Honor. Prosecution would like to call Kyle Kuzak to the stand.
All right. If you'll just wait one moment for our defense counsel to be ready. All right. Ms. Miller, are you prepared on behalf of the defense? Ms. Yet, I apologize. Are you prepared on behalf of the defense?
Yes, I am.
Okay, and you can take your mask off if that's all right, just to make sure we hear you clearly. Timekeepers, can we have a time check for remaining time on direct and cross?
Remaining time for direct for prosecution, I have 4 minutes and 52 seconds. And for cross for the defense team, I have 10 minutes and 55 seconds.
All right, does the other side agree with that timekeeping?
Yes, I have the same.
Okay, excellent. Ms. Craig, it was correct?
Correct.
All right, please proceed.
Can you state your name and spell the last for the record?
My name is Kyle Kuzak. Kuzak is spelled Kuzak.
And why are you here today?
I'm here to testify the evidence of the crime scene where Mackenzie Brackman was killed.
What is your current profession, Ms. Kuzak?
I'm currently a working civilian employee of the Denver Police Department, but have tenure with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation.
And how are you currently employed?
I'm currently employed as a crime scene reconstruction investigator.
And can you explain what that is for us, please?
I investigate complex crime scenes, which include home invasions, property crimes, homicides, and armed robberies.
Do you have formal schooling?
No.
But do you have any certifications?
Yes, I'm certified in crime scene reconstruction.
How many years have you been employed?
I have 19 years of experience and tenure at the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, but I've spent the last 3 years of that tenure with the city of Denver.
Have you ever testified as an expert before?
Yes.
And can you explain what crime scene reconstruction is?
It's essentially the studying of evidence of the case in order to determine the fact pattern of what happened in the crime.
Your Honor, under Rule 702, I move Ms. Kyle Kuzak to be tendered as an expert in crime scene reconstruction.
Ms. Yet, any objection?
Your Honor, if it's okay, I would like to perform a brief voir dire.
You may.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Kuzak, you haven't testified to any education you've had today, have you?
No, ma'am.
And you haven't testified to anything other than your experience or a couple of conference trainings that you've been to?
Yes, I do have 19 years of experience.
And you aren't a police officer, right?
No, I'm a civilian employee.
And you haven't had police officer training, have you?
No, but I'm certified as a crime scene reconstruction investigator, not as a police officer.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
All right, are you objecting to the request to admit?
No, Your Honor, I just wanted to point out to the jury that this witness does not have any formal education or police training.
All right, thank you, Ms. Yet. You may continue with your question.
What did you do for this case, Ms. Kuzak?
I visited the scene of the homicide after its original processing and reviewed police reports, photographs, and the security camera videos in order to identify a fact pattern.
Do you have a specific process for your crime scene reconstruction?
Yes, I use a 5-step process, which is recognition, documentation, collection of evidence, evaluation of evidence, hypothesis and testing, and then finally reconstruction.
And how long have you been using this 5-step process?
I've been using it for 19 years on every case I've worked on.
Would you be able to give me a summary of your steps?
Yeah, so in step 1, I tracked and documented the evidence, and then in 2 and 3, I grouped together. So I found the relationships of the evidence. In the 4th step, I conducted an analysis and developed a hypothesis, and then in step 5, I made the final report.
While you were at the crime scene, was any fingerprints or DNA picked up?
No, but that's expected. Fingerprints and DNA are not left on every surface, and it's clear that the perpetrator was wearing gloves.
Did you notice any blood splatter within the house?
Yes, there are small drops of blood between the kitchen and the front door, as well as blood cast off on the wall and ceiling near the front door, which indicates the victim was stabbed near the kitchen and made their way to the front door.
Were you aware that there was security camera footage?
Yes, I reviewed it and saw the perpetrator moving from the front door to the back door where they did enter the home.
Did you find any marks or anything within the home?
Yes, there were scuff marks near the back door.
And what do these scuff marks indicate?
They indicated a close contact situation between at least 2 people.
Did you review the coroner's report?
Yes.
And what did you find during this review?
In the coroner's report, it was clear that the victim had been stabbed in the scapula, and so only stabbed once because that would have been very hard to remove.
Was there anything out of place inside the home?
Yes, there was an open knife drawer and missing knife slot, which was the same knife used to kill the victim, and there was a broken dish.
Did you also happen to review the defense expert's Blake Van Owen's report?
Yes, I reviewed his interpretation.
Do you happen to agree with it?
No, and I even found it quite laughable.
What did you disagree with?
Well, first of all, his theory is that the intruder stabbed the victim while the victim was seated at the kitchen table, which is unlikely because the Ring app would have alerted the victim of the intruder's presence. Second, the victim would have heard the back door opening and heard the intruder walk across the kitchen. And his theory doesn't explain scuff marks, broken dish, knife drawer, or the empty knife slot.
So what are the simplified facts of this case?
I came to the conclusion after following my 5-step process. The evidence led me to is that in the afternoon of March 6, 2020, a perpetrator matching the height and build of the defendant approached the victim's home. They checked the front doors captured by the Ring, then proceeded to the south side of the home. Another camera picked up the perpetrator proceeding to the backyard. That this was clearly a planned burglary gone wrong. The intruder had knowledge of the home and had picked a time where the victim most likely wouldn't have been home, but unfortunately they were.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Craig. Ms. Yet, your witness.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. Hello, Ms. Kuzak. You investigated the scene at 444 South Flower Street, yes?
Yes, ma'am.
And you saw a body, correct?
Yes.
And you saw a knife?
Yes.
And your theory is that this knife came out of the knife block, isn't it?
Yes, it was the same knife. So.
But you are aware that the knives in the knife block did not match the brand of this knife?
Yes, but it was found that it was the same knife, as stated in my witness statement.
I'm sorry, you're telling me it is the same knife that came from the knife block?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have any hard evidence of this?
No, I just reviewed the evidence. I didn't search for further evidence, but I review all evidence.
So, I'm sorry, are you telling me that even though it was a different brand and it was mismatched from the other knives, you're sure that it came from the knife block?
Yes, as my statement says, it was the knife used to kill Mackenzie Brackman as what was missing from the knife block.
Okay. And let's talk a little bit about this bear hug stabbing you discussed in your witness statement. You believe held the intruder in a bear hug motion, yes?
Yes, there was a little, based off the scuff marks in the kitchen, there was clearly a scuffle that was occurring, and often that would have been a result.
And you believe that the intruder somehow reached over 2 different shoulders somehow to stab Mackenzie Brackman in his back. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And okay, let's talk a little bit about these ring videos that you reviewed. You could say that the person in the videos has a pretty average build, couldn't you?
It was similar build to the perpetrator, or to the defendant. I'm sorry.
But you could say that's pretty average, couldn't you?
Yeah, it could be assumed about average, potentially.
Okay. And so I just want to clarify, you're telling me that a person of average build was able to reach over 2 different shoulders of themselves and Mackenzie Brackman and was able to shove the knife into Mr. Mackenzie Brackman's back all of the way. Someone of average build was able to do that?
Yes, ma'am. She was stabbed in, Mackenzie Brackman was stabbed in the back, and that is my current theory of how it was.
Okay. And talking about ring videos, you can't tell the race of the perpetrator entering the home, can you?
No, ma'am. They were wearing a mask, gloves, and
And you can't tell the gender,
no, ma'am.
the age?
No, ma'am.
Okay. And you never spoke to Avery Becker, did you?
No.
You never spoke to Taylor Perkins?
No, I'm not a detective.
I understand. Okay. Did you ever track down any other suspects?
No, again, I'm not a detective.
Okay, but you didn't help the police force in this at all?
No, I just investigate the crime scenes. I am not a police officer.
But you do work closely with the police department, don't you?
I am employed by them currently.
And could you say that Detective Markowitz influenced your opinion on this case at all?
I wouldn't particularly say so.
But they did introduce the idea of Avery Becker to you?
Yes, I was just reviewing the investigation. I was not in charge of building a perpetrator.
Okay. But you are aware of a person named Blair Rollins?
Yes, ma'am.
And are you aware why they were an initial suspect of the prosecution?
I am, but I wasn't look into it. I was more just establishing the fact pattern of how the crime occurred rather than who the perpetrator was.
Okay. But you never looked into Blair Rollins or helped the police department in that way?
Your Honor, relevance.
Explain to me your concern, Ms. Craig.
My witness has never been involved with claiming who the perpetrator was. They were just there to analyze the crime scene. And so they never came to a conclusion who the perpetrator was, and they came to the conclusion that the perpetrator was the defendant, or any speculation like that.
All right. Ms. Yet, it seems that you're attempting to make that point. You may continue in your questions, but be aware of the prosecution's concern there. If it's a continued problem, we'll readdress. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Okay. All right. That concludes the cross-examination. I think, Ms. Craig, you probably have time for maybe one question on redirect if there's anything you'd like to add.
Yes, Your Honor, and that's perfect because I only have one question.
Great. Go ahead.
Have you ever stated that the perpetrator was the defendant, Ms. Kuzak?
No, I simply stated it was a similar height and build of the defendant.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you. And that concludes the evidence of the people, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. All right. We will move then to the defense's case. And these are the witnesses I did not get the order of or the attorneys assigned, so I apologize about that. If we can have the first defense attorney hop on and let me know who your witness is, and then the prosecution's attorney who will be handling the cross-examination.
Your Honor, the defense would first like to call Ms. Taylor Perkins to the stand.
All right, great. And it's Ms. Miller, correct?
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Miller, you'll be examining Taylor Perkins. And then it looks like we've got Ms. Mungia on behalf of the prosecution on cross. Timekeepers, are you ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, Ms. Miller, you may proceed.
Good afternoon, Ms. Perkins.
Good afternoon.
Will you please state your name and spell your last for the record?
Of course. My name is Taylor Perkins, and Perkins is spelled Perkins.
And please explain to me your education.
I'm a freshman at CU Boulder this year, and I went to Colorado High School last year.
And when did you graduate from Colorado High School?
I graduated last year, 2020.
And while at Colorado High School, were you involved in any clubs or extracurriculars?
Yes, I was involved in mock trial, actually.
And why did you choose to join mock trial?
Well, my best friend Avery Becker was on the team.
And besides your best friend Avery Becker, did you have a relationship with any other kids on the team?
Not a super significant relationship, no, but I knew Alex Cifuentes from the team.
What did you think of Alex Cifuentes?
I didn't really have too much of an opinion. He was a total kiss up to Mr. Brackman.
Speaking of, who was your coach for mock trial?
My coach was actually Mr. Mackenzie Brackman.
And what did you think of Mr. Brackman as a coach?
I thought that Mr. Brackman was like a mediocre coach and like a mediocre lawyer too. I felt like he didn't make the best decisions for the team and probably not for his clients either.
And did anyone ever share with you their views of Mr. Brackman?
Yeah, Avery and Mr. Brackman didn't have really the best relationship. They always clashed.
Will you explain that to me?
Yeah, Mr. Brackman always thought that Avery didn't put enough work into the team, and this always caused a clash between them.
And did Avery ever suffer any consequences for these clashes?
Yeah, she suffered some pretty big consequences.
Were there multiple consequences?
Yes, there was. She got demoted and also kicked off of the team, sadly, because it meant so much to her.
And that first time that she had been demoted, was there a specific reason that she was demoted down to a lower team?
Yeah, she was demoted down to B team because she was super unprepared at practice that night. It was the most unprepared I've ever seen her. She was just making things up on the fly. And Mr. Brackman, this was like a month before regionals, he just decided to demote her down to B team from that point.
And did you do anything to help Avery get back on A team?
Yeah, of course, being the best friend that I am.
And did your efforts work out?
Yeah, they worked out perfectly, and Avery Becker was back on A team, and she actually competed at regionals.
How did Avery do at regionals?
She did pretty great, actually. She won 2 awards, Best Attorney and Best Closing Argument.
And did Avery ever share with you how Mr. Brackman reacted to her winning these great awards?
Yes, she did. Mr. Brackman thought that she didn't deserve the awards and was being pretty mean to her at practice.
And you mentioned consequences earlier. Did Avery ever suffer any consequences for this supposed undeserving award that she got?
Yeah, she suffered some pretty big consequences because she actually, when she was leaving practice that night, she wore Worst Attorney Award on the hood of his 911 Porsche Carrera car, which was like his beloved car. And that got Mr. Brackman super frustrated.
What was the consequence she faced for this?
She got kicked off of the team for good, which was pretty bad because mock trial meant so much to her. She had put in the effort for all 4 years that she had been there.
Okay, I'll now direct your attention to later that evening. Just to clarify, this night that you're referencing is March 5th, 2020, yes?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and so did you see Avery or spend any time with her later that night?
Yeah, after she got kicked off of the team, me and her were trying to figure out ways that she could get back on the team.
And what were some of these ways?
Well, she texted everybody on the team, including Alex Cifuentes, I think.
Did the two of you do anything when you were hanging out that night beyond try to get Avery back on the team?
Yeah, we actually went to the Fry Shack later and saw the whole mock trial team there. And we actually saw Alex Cifuentes too.
Did you spend any time with Alex Cifuentes while at the Fry Shack?
Yeah, we did, unfortunately. It didn't go very well, though.
And what were you doing when you were spending time with Alex Cifuentes that night?
Yeah, so everybody on the mock trial team was being super sincere to Avery because they saw what happened at practice when she got kicked off. And then Alex Cifuentes had like a passive aggressive way of being sincere, which made Avery really mad because of how much mock trial meant to her. That caused her to storm off the bathroom and leave her phone on the table, which was like her third kidney. That thing was never out of reach.
And when Avery returned from the bathroom, did the two of you stay at Fry Shack?
No, we did not at all. We left really quickly after that clash.
And do you remember seeing Avery grab her phone as the two of you left that night?
No, I do not remember.
I'll direct your attention now to the next morning, the morning of March 6, 2020. Did you see Avery or spend any time with her on the morning of March 6, 2020?
Of course.
And what were the two of you doing when you were spending time together that morning?
While we were spending time together that morning, we actually rode together to school in the mornings. We usually carpooled to school, but that morning we decided not to go to school.
Why didn't you go to school that day?
Because we realized that Avery lost her phone, so I said, let's go find it.
So the less you saw of Avery's phone, what?
The less that I saw of Avery's phone, the more I knew that we had to go find it. Like I previously said, it was like her third kidney, and her phone was super, super important to her.
So please explain to me all the places that you looked for Avery's phone.
Yeah, we looked at all the stores that we went to at the mall previously that night, and we also checked with the Fry Shack.
And were there any methods that you used to try and find Avery's phone besides checking these stores?
We were calling and texting Avery's phone constantly, thinking we would hear it somewhere, but that unfortunately didn't work.
Okay. And were you ever successful in finding Miss Becker's phone?
No, unfortunately not. To this day, we have not seen her phone.
Okay. I'll direct your attention back to your mock trial coach, Mr. Brackman, now. Do you know if any other students at the Colorado High School had a relationship with Mr. Brackman besides the kids on the mock trial team?
Yeah, Blair Rollins had a pretty significant relationship with Mr. Brackman.
You're an objection. Hold on, please. Ms. Munguia, the basis of your objection?
It was relevant to why Blair Rollins' name is getting brought up.
Okay. Ms. Miller.
Yes, as I'll explain later, Blair Rollins and Alex Cifuentes ended up having a relationship, and so I'm just laying the foundation for this relationship as to who Blair Rollins is. And Your Honor, I'll just remind that relevance is a low bar, and so just based on the fact that I am in fact laying foundation for something to bring in later, this is in fact relevant.
All right.
Your Honor, may I respond?
You may.
Your Honor, Blair Rollins isn't even in this courtroom today, so why would he be relevant in this case?
Your Honor, may I respond to that?
You may, Ms. Miller.
As I mentioned previously, we'll learn here through Miss Perkins' testimony that Alex Cifuentes and Blair Rollins had a relationship, and so I'm not necessarily bringing Blair Rollins in because he is or is not present here today, but more just to lay foundation for the fact that Blair Rollins exists and therefore can have a relationship with Alex Cifuentes.
All right. I will overrule the objection at this time and allow it. Ms. Munguia, if you think we get too off track, you can certainly object again. Go ahead, Ms. Miller.
Okay, so who was Blair Rollins?
Blair Rollins was a kid at our high school.
And you mentioned that he had a relationship with Mr. Brackman. As far as you know, what was this relationship?
So Blair Rollins was the son of a guy that was sentenced to murder, and Blair Rollins...
There's been an objection. Hold on one moment, Ms. Perkins. What's the objection, Ms. Munguia?
Speculation. The witness is not able to guess about the relationship as she is not one in the relationship between them, the two that she is referring to.
All right, Ms. Miller, have your witness testify to their own knowledge and observations, all right?
Yes, of course. So Ms. Perkins, as far as you know, did you ever learn anything about the relationship between Blair Rollins and Mr. Brackman?
Yeah, the relationship was told at our school constantly, especially because Blair Rollins' dad was sentenced to murder, which was really scary, and Mr. Brackman was actually the attorney for his case.
And would you say that this was considered gossip at your school?
Yeah, it was considered gossip, and everybody talked about it.
What was the objection, Ms. Munguia?
It was hearsay. This is an out-of-court statement.
Ms. Miller?
I'm not bringing in a specific statement, but rather the general gossip or reputation surrounding Blair Rollins. And so, given that this is not, in fact, a specific statement, it is not hearsay.
All right.
Your Honor, may I respond?
You may.
What is the relevance to this of having the gossip brought into this case? As I stated before, Blair Rollins is not even here.
Your Honor, may I respond?
You may.
I was just attempting to lay that foundation for how Ms. Perkins has the personal knowledge of Blair Rollins and Mr. Brackman's relationship. And so it was just an attempt to lay some foundation.
All right. I do think we're getting to your point, Ms. Miller, which let's try to do in a concise manner. Ms. Munguia, the objection will be overruled as to hearsay. It doesn't sound like this is coming in for the truth of the matter asserted. Ms. Miller, you may proceed.
Okay. So I'll just re-ask my question. Was this considered gossip at your school?
Yes, it was. It was pretty much legend at our school. It was a pretty significant thing, like a kid at our school's dad getting sentenced for murder. That was super scary.
And as far as you know, did anyone that you spent time with have a relationship or a friendship with Blair Rollins?
Yeah, pretty weirdly actually. Alex Cifuentes and Blair Rollins were best friends, and they're both completely different people. Like I've told you before, Alex is a total kiss up, and then Blair Rollins has the reputation of a total sociopath or hitman, you say, which they're very different people, which was interesting.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
All right. Ms. Munguia, your witness.
Alrighty. Is it true that you and Avery Becker were friends on the mock trial team?
Yes, we were best friends.
And isn't it true that you thought Mackenzie Brackman was a mediocre coach?
Yeah, he was a mediocre coach and also a mediocre lawyer, in my opinion.
And isn't it true that Avery Becker and Mackenzie Brackman didn't have the best relationship?
No, they did not, from what I saw.
And during mock trial practices, Avery Becker showed up late to multiple practices, correct?
Yes, Avery was constantly late.
Alrighty. In addition to being late, Avery Becker was almost never prepared, correct?
Yeah, Avery had a way of being unprepared at times, but I think that through Avery's personality and everything, she's really good at making things up on the fly.
Ms. Munguia,
Sorry.
Hold on for one moment. I need you to allow the witness to finish. We can't talk over each other. Ms. Perkins, please answer the questions that you're asked.
Could you repeat your question? Sorry.
Yeah, of course. In addition to them being late, Avery Becker was almost never prepared.
Yeah, Avery wasn't really prepared from what I saw.
Alrighty. And isn't it true that Mackenzie Brackman would get upset during practices due to this, just based off your observations?
Yes.
Isn't it true that Avery Becker began to play pranks on Mr. Brackman?
Yeah, she did.
You guys had a regional tournament last year for mock trial. Isn't it true that Avery Becker was not prepared for this tournament?
Yeah, she was not prepared, but she won 2 awards.
Since Avery Becker was unprepared yet again, Mackenzie Brackman was upset about this, correct? Just based off your observations.
Yes, he was upset and he didn't think that she deserved the awards that she got.
Isn't it true that Becker got knocked down to mock trial's B team?
Yes.
But is it also true that a week before regionals, you personally decided to step down from your position on A team?
Yes, I did.
Is it true that Avery Becker vandalized Mr. Brackman's car?
Yes.
Is it true that after this incident, Avery Becker was kicked off the team?
Yeah, she was kicked off the team for good, unfortunately. I didn't think it was fair.
Is it true that on Thursday after school, you and Avery Becker decided to go to the Fry Shack?
Yes.
And you observed Alex Fuentes and Avery Becker talk that evening at the Fry Shack, didn't you?
Yeah, we were all sitting together.
When you and Avery Becker decided to leave, you did not personally see the defendant leave their phone, correct?
No, I don't really remember exactly where she left her phone, but I didn't see her grab her phone that night, no.
And you didn't know that the phone was missing till the next day, correct?
No, I don't really have, I didn't really track the phone, so I only noticed it the next day, and I brought it up to Avery.
And it was Avery Becker who told you that they lost their phone, correct?
Yeah, we realized it together in the car.
Alrighty, no further questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Ms. Miller, any redirect?
No redirect, Your Honor.
Okay. Ms. Perkins, you are excused as a witness. Thank you for your testimony here today. I believe the
you.
defense has a second witness to call. Ms. Yet, are you directing this witness?
I'm sorry?
Are you directing this witness?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
The defense calls Professor Blake Van Owen to the stand.
All right. All right, we've got Professor Van Owen there, and then it looks like we have Ms. Craig on behalf of the prosecution. Timekeepers, can we have a check on time?
I have 16 minutes remaining for the defense's direct, and I have 16 minutes and 46 seconds left for the prosecution's cross-examination.
Okay, is that consistent for the other team?
All right, yes.
Professor Van Owen. Great. Ms. Yet, you can remove your mask if you don't mind. Just want to make sure we hear you clearly.
All right, sorry about that.
No worries. All right, proceed with your witness when you're ready.
Thank you. Please state your name and spell the last for the record.
Blake Van Owen, Vanowen.
And Professor, what do you do for work?
At the moment, I'm a private investigator as well as teach a course.
And can you tell us a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, I started out as a police officer and left that and became a SRO and a private security guard, and ended up where I am now, teaching a course for about 5 years now about police practices, as well as being a private investigator.
And do you specialize in any smaller fields within investigation?
Naturally, I have testified multiple times before as an expert witness in cell tower analysis. I've done that like 5 or 8 times. I picked up general police investigation tactics and police practices just through all of my years in the justice system, and I've actually have gone to multiple courses about crime scene reconstruction.
And can you tell us a little bit more about the class that you teach? What is that about?
Yes, I earned my master's degree, and I teach a class on police practices. I earned that through the Ashford University program.
So you could say you're pretty experienced.
I'd say I'm very experienced. I've consulted on over 100 cases.
All right, I would now ask the court to accept Professor Blake Van Owen as an expert in police practices, crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analysis, and general police investigation tactics.
All right, Ms. Craig?
Yes, I would like to object.
The basis of your objection?
Yes, Your Honor. This witness hasn't had any proper or formal schooling for the crime scene reconstruction, and the only degree that they have is in criminal justice. So I ask that anything that does not fall under that category they do not be moved as an expert witness in.
Your
Anything
Honor,
that
may I respond?
Yeah, one moment. Anything that doesn't fall under the category of criminal justice?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Ms. Yet, please provide some additional basis regarding the specific areas you're asking for admission on.
Your Honor, under Rule 702, witnesses can be admitted as experts if they have testified to knowledge, skill, education, training, or experience in these specific fields, which Professor Van Owen has done for all of these today.
Can you clarify for me on the area of CSR?
He's testified to testifying in other states in crime scene reconstruction.
Okay. And perhaps I missed that, and I apologize if I did. Can you just explain a bit about his background and training, or perhaps question your witness about that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to lay some more foundation. Professor, can you talk a little more about your training in crime scene reconstruction?
Yeah, the conferences that I went to were the same as Kuzak, as well as that I have been accepted multiple other times, 8 other times to be exact, on as being an expert witness in other courts.
Thank you. Your Honor, I now move for the admission of this witness in crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analysis, general police investigation tactics, and police practices.
All right. And I note the objection of the people here. However, based on the testimony of Professor Van Owen, I will find he has sufficient knowledge, skill, experience, training, and education to assist the trier of fact on these specific topics. If you have concerns as he testifies, Ms. Craig, that he's going outside that scope, you can certainly object again. You may
Thank
continue.
you, Your Honor. All right. Can you talk to me a little bit about Kyle Kuzak's overall investigation on this case?
Yeah, I'd love to. The first thing I would say about his analysis, if you may, was that it's very sloppy and rushed. About the only thing we really agree on is that there was an intruder in the household.
And can you talk to me a little bit about the hard evidence of this case that Kyle found at the scene?
Yeah, I know that the main thing that he said that really supported him was that there was supposed scuff marks by the rear door where the intruder entered through. We don't know how long those have been. We don't know how old they are. I can almost guarantee you almost everybody in this call right now, this court session, if they went back home and had wood floors, they would also find scuff marks. That's not reliable. We haven't done anything to prove how old those are. And on top of that, yes.
Oh, that's okay. I was just going to ask about the knife that they found at the crime scene.
Yeah, the knife that they found does not match any of the brands that the victim owned. That's just sloppy police work.
And can you tell me a little bit about Kuzak's theory of a bear hug stabbing? That kind of.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and try and act it out the best I can here. Kuzak's here's his theory. The intruder and the victim got in this bear hug motion where the intruder was in front of him and they were struggling like this. And the intruder somehow got the knife over 2 shoulders into the back like this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And can you talk to me a little bit about cell tower analysis and Detective Markowitz's work with that?
Yeah, so to start off, cell tower analysis is not an exact science. It's more of a relative idea and area over the radius. It's not pinpoint accurate like a GPS.
And can you talk to me a little bit more about what Detective Markowitz did within this case?
First off, I'll tell you what Markowitz didn't do. Markowitz could have easily obtained more detailed phone records, could have gotten a more detailed cell tower analysis through the phone. There's a lot he could do. The less I see the cops put an effort and work into the case, the more I know that they rushed it and had a clear-cut mind on what they wanted.
And can we talk a little bit about Avery's lost phone and how that plays into the cell towers?
Yeah, Markowitz's whole cell tower analysis puts Avery's phone, may I add and emphasize on, near Brackman's house. Keep in mind that that's Avery's phone, not Avery.
Okay, thank you. And can we talk a little bit about the text messages that the police accepted from Alex Cifuentes?
It's a shame that the police accepted those text messages. They could easily have taken the phone from Cifuentes at a later date and gotten more solid evidence on that, and could have easily have used Cellbrite, as we had heard earlier, and gotten a very accurate depiction of it. But they decided to just take a teenager's word.
Okay, and can we talk a little bit about your investigation you performed on this case? Can you walk me through it a little bit?
Yeah, I'll sum it up really fast and make it simple for the jury here today. My main investigation on this case was going over all of the evidence that we had, because keep in mind, we don't have all of the evidence here today. We were missing blood splatter and blood drop photos, and that just proves more the less I see that they have less work, less effort, less evidence for us to see, the more I know that they rushed everything and just had a easy way to do it instead of completing actual police work.
Okay, and let's move on to the suspects that the police came up with. Can you tell me your input on that?
Yeah, I'll just focus on the one suspect that I think actually mattered that they came up with, which was Blair Rollins.
And who is Blair Rollins?
Blair Rollins is a CHS student, as we heard earlier, and his father is Jonathan Rollins, a former client of Brackman.
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
What is your concern here, Ms. Craig?
My concern is that the witness has been moved as an expert in many things, but by reading his testimony, he is not credible to choose who he thinks that the actual perpetrator would be. And also Blair is not here today.
All right, Ms. Yet, your response.
Your Honor, this is relevant because Professor Van Owen is simply trying to discuss a suspect that he found throughout his general police investigation. And this was also a former suspect of the prosecutions. And may I remind you that relevance is a low bar.
All right. I think the witness has been called to indict the prosecution's investigation here. Tailor it to that mode of thinking and we can continue. The objection is overruled. Ms. Yet?
Thank you, Your Honor. Investigator, can you tell me why Blair is relevant to this case?
Yeah, I think Blair has many reasons to have been the intruder into the household. Primarily the fact that he saw his father get ripped away from him and his family get torn apart because of the fact that Brackman lost his father's case, and Jonathan Rollins, Blair Rollins' father, was sent to jail for life. That can really hurt and traumatize a kid.
And can you tell me a bit about your standard investigation on Blair?
Yeah, I conducted, as you just said, a standard investigation to try and locate and contact Blair, and conducted online, used all the resources I had, and I wasn't able to locate him, which led me to believe that he fled Colorado. And I also just want to quickly add that the trial that with his father was just months before the murder of Brackman.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
All right. Ms. Craig?
Yes, Your Honor. Isn't it true that you are a personal investigator?
Yes.
Now, isn't it true that you were a cop before you were said personal investigator?
Yeah.
Now, isn't it true that you were only the police officer for 9 months?
Yeah.
Now, isn't it true that personal investigators have no affiliation or official affiliations with a police department or anything of that manner?
I would believe so, yeah.
Isn't it true that you are paid money for being a personal investigator?
That's how the job works.
Isn't it true that you are paid $225 an hour as a personal investigator?
Yeah, that's about right.
And you've said that you've testified in 100 court cases, correct?
Over about, hence consulted on.
Now, isn't it true that for these 100 court cases or so, you have only testified for the defense, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Craig. Ms. Yet, any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, Professor Van Owen, you are excused. Thank you for your testimony here today. I believe the defense has one final witness. We'll allow them to prepare the witness stand for that witness. Just one moment, please. And we have, looks like Ms. Gonzalez for the people. Is that correct? All right. And then those aren't the correct names. I think it's Ms. Thompson.
No.
And Ms. Klausner, correct?
Yes, Your Honor, that's correct.
Okay. All right. Ms. Thompson, you're acting as the attorney directing this witness, correct?
Yes, I am.
All right. Timekeepers, can we get a time check before this final witness?
For the defense's direct, I have 7 minutes and 53 seconds remaining. And for the prosecution's cross, I have 15 minutes and 39 seconds.
All right. You may proceed, Ms. Thompson.
Thank you. Please state your name, spelling your last for the record.
My name is Avery Becker. Becker is spelled Becker.
Are you currently in high school, Miss Becker?
No, I graduated Colorado High School last year.
Were you in any extracurriculars during your time in high school?
Oh yeah, I was in mock trial and it was just great. It was everything to me.
Were you good at mock trial?
Yeah, I'd say I had this natural talent for it.
Did you have any teammates on your team?
Yeah, so actually, it turned out my best friend, Taylor Perkins, was interested in it. So we were in mock trial together, and Alex Cifuentes, as you heard testify earlier.
Are you friends with Alex Cifuentes?
No, we're just acquaintances.
Did you hear them testify earlier today?
I did, and it was quite confusing.
What was confusing about it?
Just how close Alex seemed to have thought we were. I really didn't. We weren't. I don't know where they got that information.
Did you guys have a coach on your team?
Yeah, our coach was Mackenzie Brackman.
What was your relationship like?
It was rough, but I still really appreciated everything Mr. Brackman did for the team, although we often had disagreements.
Was there a certain disagreement that stands out to you now?
Yeah, there were a couple, one of which was took place after regional competitions, and after Mr. Brackman showed less than enough appreciation for my prestigious awards, I decided to write on his car in permanent marker.
How did you feel after you wrote on his car?
Truly disgusted with myself. I honestly thought that it was an expo marker. I had it in my hand ready to write on the whiteboard before I left, and it was a shock when I found out what I had done.
Do you feel bad about what you did?
Every day.
Let's talk a little bit about March 6th. What were you doing the day of March 6th, 2020?
I was looking for my phone with my best friend, Taylor Perkins. Nothing else. We spent the whole day looking for the phone.
Were you with Taylor all day?
I was. The whole day.
Did you see Mr. Brackman on March 6th?
No, not a lot of people did. I didn't see him.
Let's talk a little bit more about your relationship with Mr. Brockman. Did you ever want to hurt Mr. Brockman because of your arguments?
Absolutely not. I'm not a violent person, and I would never wish any harm upon Mr. Brackman. I can disagree with the person and still respect them, and I respected Mr. Brackman, and I wouldn't want anything to hurt him.
How has the loss of Mr. Brockman affected you?
It's affected me deeply. Every day I think about how I never got the chance to apologize to him after I ruined a precious item of his, which was already regret enough. And on top of that, never getting closure out of it, it's really mentally taxing.
I think we have an objection from the prosecution.
Oh, sorry.
Narrative.
Objection as to narrative? All right, Ms. Thompson, your response?
I believe my witness was done speaking, but I can respond to the objection to the earlier statement.
All right, let's just move on. Ms. Gonzalez, if you have an objection, make sure you state it timely. And Ms. Thompson, please make sure that you're questioning your witness. Thank you.
Let's talk a little bit more about the incident involving Mr. Brockman's car. Did you ever try to apologize to him?
Oh, countless times.
What happened when you... Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
What happened when you tried to apologize to him?
Understandably, he didn't want to speak to me. When I would try to address him in person, I was turned away, and he never responded to my texts, calls, or emails.
Did you ever want to hurt Mr. Brockman because he didn't accept your apology?
Absolutely not. I was upset with myself, and I knew I had brought the consequences on myself. And I just felt terrible. I mean, it was a shame that he didn't want to speak to me, but I couldn't blame him for it.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right. Ms. Gonzalez, you may cross.
You're Avery Becker, correct?
Yes, I am.
And you attended Colorado High School?
That's right.
As a student at Colorado High School, you participated on the mock trial team, correct?
Yeah, all 4 years. It was kind of my thing.
Ms. Gonzalez, if you can just speak up a bit, I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Sorry. Mr. Brackman was the head coach of that team, correct?
Yes, he was.
And you and Mr. Brackman didn't get along very well, did you?
Not always. We had our arguments.
And Mr. Brackman was also frustrated with you because you did not show up to practice on time, correct?
Yeah, that he was.
You believed Mr. Brackman was a joke?
At times, the way he acted made me feel that way. But looking back at it now, I miss him.
And it would upset you when Mr. Brackman would criticize you at practice, correct?
Yes, definitely. I just felt like I could never do anything right in his eyes.
And you and Mr. Brackman argued at almost every practice, correct?
Yeah.
Following one of those arguments, you vandalized Mr. Brackman's car with the permanent marker, correct?
Yeah, it was a terrible mistake, but I did.
You were then completely kicked off the team, correct?
Yeah, it was pretty final.
And after being kicked off, did you or did you not say you were even madder?
Objection hearsay.
Ms. Gonzalez?
Your Honor, this is in my Avery Becker's affidavit.
All right, I think the witness can answer the question. Your objection is overruled. Ms. Becker?
I was upset after the incident, yeah, that I was kicked off. But I really needed time to think it over, I guess, and see the error of my ways. But yes, I was rather upset.
And is it true that you told your mother I would get back at him if it was the last thing I did?
Yeah, I didn't mean it that way. I meant I really wanted to apologize and get back on the team.
No more questions, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Ms. Thompson, I believe you have a remaining time if you'd like to redirect.
Yes, just a short redirect. Miss Becker, although you had arguments with Mr. Brockman, did that ever make you want to wish harm upon him?
No. I made many mistakes and I realized the error of my ways. I wish I could go back and change them, and I would never want anything bad to happen to Mr. Brockman.
Did you ever hurt Mr. Brockman?
No, absolutely not. Not over mock trial. Not over anything. I wouldn't do that.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. And thank you, Ms. Becker. You are excused to remain sitting through the remainder of the trial. At this point in time, we'll prepare for closing arguments. I believe that was going to be presented on behalf of the prosecution by Andy Craig and behalf of the defense by Abby Miller. If we can just take about 30 seconds to get prepared for that, I need to do one thing before we proceed. Just one moment.
Your Honor, I've just now had the opportunity to hop on this Zoom call once again. Were you mentioning something regarding closing statements?
Yes, we're just getting prepared for those. I needed to take a quick break since we've gone a bit over time here and communicate with some out-of-court staff. So, are you
Sounds
handling
great.
the closing argument there?
I am, yes. I will be performing it for the defense, yes.
Okay. All right. Are you prepared to proceed, Ms. Craig?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Timekeepers, are you ready?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
And
go ahead.
And before I start, I would like to save any remaining time for a rebuttal after the defense.
Okay, I'll allow any remaining time.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, thank you for your time and attention throughout this trial. After hearing all of the facts, you are now faced with an important job of deciding whether or not this was in fact a burglary gone bad. You have heard the case, and you now know that Avery Becker burgled the home of his mock trial teacher, Mackenzie Brockman, and in the course, Mackenzie Brockman was murdered. You also know that the location of the defendant's cell phone was found at the scene of the crime, and the defendant has stated motive. The facts of this case are simple to see. This is a vindictive student who went to the house of his mock trial teacher to burglarize the house and ended up with a dead body. Burglary gone bad. The burden of proof falls upon the prosecution to prove, beyond a reasonable doubt, that all elements necessary to constitute the crime charged. And today, ladies and gentlemen, the prosecution has done just that. Murder in the first degree and second-degree burglary of a dwelling. Second-degree burglary is defined as a person who enters unlawfully or remains unlawfully in or upon premises when the person is not licensed, invited, or otherwise privileged to do so. A murder felony charge is defined as committing or attempting to commit a second-degree offense, and during that time, a death occurring. Avery Becker did enter the premises of the now deceased Mackenzie Brockman without any invitation, and while doing so, committed a murder. Avery Becker wrecked the house like he wrecked the car, without hesitation. And today, the prosecution has called 3 witnesses to the stand. First up, we have Detective Jordan, who is admitted as an expert witness and had been a detective for 7 years. He provided you with information relating to his forensic examination of the defendant's cell phone. What we know from this testimony is that the defendant's phone was at the home of Mackenzie Brockman during the time of the murder. Now, you heard testimony during the defense's cross-examination that forensic information only shows where the phone is, but not who has it. But ask yourselves, ladies and gentlemen, What teenager is ever without their phone? What teenager lacks knowledge of where their phone is every second of the day? Next, you heard from Alex Cifuentes. Miss Cifuentes and the defendant may not have been the best of friends, but she had several experiences with the defendant while they were both on the mock trial team. All of this experience with the defendant and the victim has shown to you today that the defendant has had some serious motive and ultimately the intent to cause harm. And finally, we had our expert witness, Ms. Kyle Kuzak. Her expert testimony showed that without a doubt, there was a burglary gone bad. Her examination of the crime scene demonstrated that this burglary tragically turned into a felony murder. While Ms. Kuzak was unable to specifically place Avery at the location that night, that was not her job. Our expert's job was to examine the crime scene, which she did, and after doing so, came to her final conclusion. There was a murder at the same time as a burglary. While our witnesses were not perfect, but let's admit it, who is? Two of them were shown to be experts, and the other had a personal relationship with the defendant and the victim. Now let's examine the defense's witnesses. Let's not forget about the biases found throughout all of the defendant's witnesses. The defendant has stated multiple times that they did not like the victim and intended to do something about it. That made me even madder is a direct quote from the defendant themselves, which in itself shows motive. The defendant has shown anger towards the victim already when they vandalized their coach's pride and joy Porsche with a Sharpie. The burden of proof falls upon the prosecution today. With the testimony presented, the prosecution was able to push past this burden without a reasonable doubt. My teammates and I stand in front of you to ask you to find the defendant, Avery Becker, guilty of not only murder in the first degree, but also burglary of a dwelling in the second degree. A burglary gone bad. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Craig. Ms. Miller, your closing statement on behalf of the defendant.
Before I begin, I'd just like to confirm that timers are ready.
We are.
The less I see, the more I know. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have heard the case of the people of the state of Colorado versus Miss Avery Becker, and you have been called to determine whether the defendant in this case, Miss Avery Becker, is responsible for all of the crimes that she has been charged with here today. We saw 6 witnesses take the stand today, the first 3 on behalf of the prosecution. We first saw Detective Jordan Markowitz and Kyle Kuzak take the stand. The detective, along with Ms. Kuzak, laid out investigations and stories backed solely by potentially falsified and partial evidence. And more than that, explained to us how the prosecution and the police working for them lost evidence in this case, meaning that there are key and crucial blood splatter photos from the crime scene that you, nor I, nor the defendant in this case will be able to see here today. The less evidence I see presented by the prosecution, the more I know about the fact that the prosecution has failed to present you with their entire case today. We also saw Alex Cifuentes take the stand on behalf of the prosecution today. Alex Cifuentes, who made desperate attempts to authenticate a text conversation between them and Miss Becker. But as we saw here today, the text conversation was never truly authenticated because no effort was put in by the prosecution to ever gain access to Ms. Cifuentes' phone itself. Additionally, we saw Ms. Cifuentes make claims about a supposed best friend relationship with my client, Ms. Becker. But the less I see of Alex Cifuentes testifying on behalf of their best friend here today, the more questions I have about not only their relationship, but the story that Alex Cifuentes has presented us with today. We also saw 3 witnesses take the stand on behalf of the defense. Ms. Taylor Perkins and Ms. Avery Becker presented us with simple and authentic alibis and testimonies here today. And the less discrepancies I see between their testimonies, the more I know about the validity of their alibis from March 6, 2020. We also saw Professor Blake Van Owen take the stand today. Blake Van Owen, who laid out a well thought out and well investigated investigation into this case. as well as another suspect, Blair Rollins, that the prosecution's own expert witnesses failed to fully investigate. The less witnesses I see presented by the prosecution, the more I know about the lazy job that was done not only in their investigations, but in seeking justice for Mr. Brackman. Ladies and gentlemen, I now ask you to think of yourself as you were when you were a teenager. And think of someone that you may have bickered with, whether it was your mom, your dad, your sister, your brother, your coach. But think of how, despite any bickering or arguments that ensued between the two of you, you ended up here. You ended up all right. But what if you hadn't? What if something terrible happened to this person that you've just imagined, and you were blamed? What if you were subpoenaed to court to plead to complete strangers that you were not the one responsible? You would want them to see you as the bright, young individual that you are. You would want them to hear you, especially as they made their final decision in your case. I'll now direct your attention to jury instructions 7, 8, and 9 in this case, all of which lay out each and every one of the elements that the prosecution must prove in order to convict my client Avery Becker here today. I'll remind you as well that the prosecution has a burden of proof that they must meet today to prove beyond a reasonable doubt each and every one of these elements, and that if they fail to prove even one of these elements, that Ms. Becker must be found not guilty on all accounts. As we can see in these elements, the prosecution has not only failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the crimes charged occurred within the state of Colorado, but that the crimes charged were actually done by Ms. Becker. The less I see of the prosecution's ability to prove each and every one of these elements, the more I know about their lack of ability to meet their burden of proof. The less I see of the prosecution's ability to meet their burden of proof here today, the more I know that Ms. Becker must be found innocent on all accounts. But more than anything, ladies and gentlemen, the less I see, the more I know that there is no principled person within this courtroom today who could find my client, the defendant in this case, Miss Avery Becker, anything but not guilty today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Ms. Craig, I believe you have a short amount of time for rebuttal.
Yes, Your Honor. And I would just like for the timekeepers just to put into the chat how much time I have left.
All right. 1 minute and 5 seconds. You may proceed.
In order for you to believe that the defendant did not have her phone that day, you have to believe that some other criminal mastermind took the phone from the defendant, somehow knew that the defendant was going to skip school that day, and specifically planned to commit a murder on that same day. That is not a reasonable doubt. We have shown motive not only from the witnesses we called to the stand, but also from the defendant themselves, from their own prior statements. Also, let's not forget the phone collection data. The less they saw of the defendant that night, the more they knew and placed the records of Avery and the vicinity of Mr. Brockman's home. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that will conclude the factual presentation of our case. The jury will now deliberate. Excellent job done here by both sides. I know we're a little bit over time, so I don't want to obligate any of our scorekeepers, but I'm sure the students would be happy to hear any comments or critiques that you would be willing to present. If we want to take just a few moments to do that, I can take about 10 minutes. Are any of our scoring presenters able to take that time? If not, you can simply complete your score sheet and we can get our host back on board here to make sure that those have been received. Hi, Ms. Henderson, you're on mute. Can you unmute? There you go. Great.
I'm always happy to take an opportunity to talk. I work for the city of Greeley now, but I was a federal prosecutor in Washington, D.C. for a number of years. And you guys, prosecution, I don't think you believed your case. And, you know, usually you have to give yourself something to work for that matters. And I think that prosecution, you know, you are doing what you believe is the will of the people. You're trying to protect citizens by prosecuting criminals, and maybe